Welcome to this week's edition of the Belau Report. I'm Jane Belau. Before I introduce two legends for tonight's program, I want to say this. The Eagles Cancer Telethon did very well, and all of you in our surrounding communities with your pancake breakfasts and your different fundraisers did a wonderful job, as did the people of Rochester. We just thank you because breast cancer is one of the areas that is being funded by the research dollars that you raised at Mayo Clinic, the University of Minnesota, and the Hormel Institute. So thank you, everybody, for all you did all year. And those of you who showed up on a 20 below zero day, fantastic. All right, we have two legends from the Minnesota legislature. And they represent two very different parts of the legislature. And I will introduce them to you. They're both authors of a book, and they're both essential parts of this community. And we'll do seniority first, as it reigns in the legislature, and say, I know you all from the programs that we've done over the years, know Representative David Bishop, who is really an incredible leader of the legislature. And he's now an incredible author. And he wrote this book called Finding Common Ground, The Art of Legislating in an Age of Gridlock. And we think every member of Congress should have a copy of this book. Dave Bishop with a foreword by Lori Sturtevant. And thank you for coming. It was cold today, and your wife Bee took good care of you, and Amy Caucutt was one of the people who brought you for us. And before I even ask you about your book, I'll introduce Amy Caucutt. Amy is one of those remarkable legislative specialists called a lobbyist by some, but she is probably the most trusted lobbyist, I think, in the legislature, because when Amy gives you her word, it's good. And she works for Olmsted County, and that means almost everybody in the viewing area. And she also worked with Dave Bishop for many years. Wasn't she there a lot of years that you were there?
Almost all.
Right. What years did you start, Amy?
I started in 1990. You were there from 1982 on.
Right.
And
Well,
you did much work before I got there, but you were our champion.
Well, you told me what to do.
And you did it. You did it.
is that right? You didn't put that
sure.
in your book.
About Amy?
Yeah?
Well,
That she told you what to do?
oh, absolutely.
You know,
I mean, my legislative agenda for Olmsted County was Amy. She was there all the time. You know, you look around the room when you're sitting there in a committee meeting, there she is, she's watching you.
that's good. That's
Oh,
good.
yeah, she was terrific.
Not that you needed watching, though.
Oh, but she watched to be sure I was doing what I was told. I'm
Amy, I
serious.
never heard that about you. No. David, give us kind of a reprise.
Say, look, Jane, see the author? My mother called me David.
Do I remind you of your mother?
Call me Dave.
Dave, yes, all right. I guess you told me that a few times over the years. Okay, Dave, will you do a reprise of your legislative experience? When did you first go to the legislature? You were an attorney.
I was elected in '82 and started in '83. And when I got to legislature in '83, I tried to figure out, what am I doing? I went to a senior legislature. Should I tell you a couple stories?
Yep.
I went to a senior Republican legislator, and here he was. You know, you got more stuff on this desk than he had on his. And I said, how can you do this? He said, what? And I said, keep a clean desk. I said, I've got so much on my desk to read. Well, he said, I'll read the bills that come in, my copies, and I just throw them in the basket because I'm in the minority. and I don't have anything to do unless it's one of my bills. Well, I thought about that, and I said, if I'm in the minority, and like he is, I won't get anything done. Well, a short time after that, a Republican legislator from Moorhead, Merlin Vollen, called me across the hall. His office was just across the hall from mine, and for coffee. And he said, "Dave, what are you doing here?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're financially where? What are you pointing at? The
Your
wrong
camera. No,
What?
you're doing good. He just put it on you.
Oh, okay. He said, "You're financially independent. You're politically independent. You know, why do you come up here?" I said, "Merlin, I'm a lawyer. I want to make law, and I want to make good law." Well, he said, "If you want to make law, you got to do it on conference committees. Because when we're set up where the House passes a bill and the Senate passes a bill, and they put them together in the conference committee. And you got to be on the conference committee to write the last version of the law." I said, "Merlin, how do I get on conference committees?" He said, "Well, you go to an author. If you see a bill you like, you go to an author and said, and you say, 'How can I help you?' And when you're somebody that helps, whether it's a majority bill or a minority bill, they always need some help. And when you help them, they want you on their conference committee." Okay, I said, fine. From then on, I was on conference committees all the time. I really got it.
You know, I've never heard that before, and I'm glad to hear that. And I hope all our young legislators are watching.
Well, it's in my book.
Yeah,
as
I know that.
The most important lesson. If you haven't heard it, I recommend you read the book.
I did. I did.
Okay. And you
All right,
did.
you got
and
some
Amy
more
likes,
stories.
Amy's bought more of my books than any other individual.
Guess I know
Okay.
who needs them.
All right, you have several stories to tell.
Well, I do, you know. One of them was about conference committees. What I learned was that if on a good bill, a bill that has important, the speaker goes to the author and says, "Give me 5 names for the conference committee," and make one of them a minority.
Yeah, that's okay.
I,
I'm just helping.
I keep, when you look at the sky, I wonder if I'm talking it right. Okay, well, you're supposed to have a light on the camera. Okay, anyway, that gave me the idea that I could generally, it was a minority member, because most of the bills were being passed by Democrats, and I'm a Republican. So I helped bills and got on conference committees. And in the case of the 1993 bonding bill, I had been on this 93 or yes, I think it was 93. I had been on the conference on the Capital Investment Committee, which forms the bonding bill, and I got put on the conference committee. And in order to pass a bonding bill, you have to have 81 votes, and the Democrats didn't have 81 votes. So I got to my Republicans and I said, give me the power to be on the conference committee, and I won't betray you. I won't double cross you for anything for myself. I'll get what the Republicans have to have. So they did. We had a caucus, and they said, "Okay, Dave, you do it for us, and we will stick with you." So what did that mean? That meant that my one vote on that conference committee was the key vote for the bill. And when we got into conference, Senator Randy Kelly made a motion to pass something and to agree to something in the conference, and somebody, one of the Democrats, seconded the motion, and Henry Callis was chairing the meeting, and he asked for the vote, and they all voted. All the senators voted yes, and Lawrence Solberg was from Grand Rapids, was sitting next to me, and he put his hand up for yes, and I didn't. And he looked at me and saw that I wasn't voting for it, and he took his hand down. And so did the other Democrat. I was the only Republican. All the Democrat members of the House Conference Committee. And Senator Kelly said, "Mr. Chairman, what's going on? I just moved to approve something that was passed by the House." And Callis said, Lawrence Solberg said, Senator Kelly, "What you don't understand is if Representative Bishop doesn't vote for it, the bill isn't going to pass." That was the supreme element of power. In the book, it's the peak power I ever had as a minority member. But Jane, the book is really a case book. I wrote it because I'd had such success in getting bills passed from the minority side. I passed more from the minority side than legislators were in the majority passing them. And so it was a method. And I think that the method, as I've outlined in this book, Finding Common Ground, is to build bridges between the majority and the minority and work together. On the front of the book is two hands clasping, shaking hands. And that's the symbol of the book. We have gridlock in many legislatures in the country. I took copies of my book. I bought 100 copies of my book, and I sent 2 of them to each legislative library of the 50 states.
Good.
So they would have in the library the book on how to build bridges between the majority and the minority. The hazard that I see in the book, and make a point of it, that I think is ruining our democracy, is excessive partisanship. Yeah. We're getting a gridlock. Now, Congress has passed a couple of bills. I like Tim Walz. He's a Democrat, but he's our representative in Congress. And Tim told me, I sent him a copy of my book, and he read it, and he said, "Dave, we just did an exercise in Congress that was an example of just what you're talking about in your book." Colin Peterson, another Democrat representative in Congress from Minnesota, up in northwestern Minnesota, and I are on the Agriculture Committee. And we both supported the Republican chairman of the Agriculture Committee on his bill. And he put us on the conference committee that wrote the final big ag bill. It proved exactly what you're saying on how to build common ground.
You raised so many questions, and I'm afraid I'll get off of Minnesota and on to the Washington scene, but I don't know what has happened to the Congress, because when the Democrats had both houses, a lot of stuff didn't get passed, and then the Republicans have both houses, and now they can't get the Republican legislation passed. So what's wrong?
Well, there's a real bad happening. I don't think the founders of the Constitution perceived what's happening now. What's going on, Jane, in the Republican caucus in the House? There's a majority of the House members of Congress in the House of Representatives that are Republicans. But the majority, and they elected the Speaker. But that Speaker cannot get his bills passed without a minority of the Republican caucus supporting him. So they tell him, we'll vote for it, and you otherwise won't get a majority unless you make deals with the Democrats. The majority rule is being perverted by minorities within the majority that lock up the majority. That's not visualized as the way they're supposed to work. Our democracy is viewed as a democracy. Democracy means people government, democracy, but it means the majority. And when you can't get a majority because of a militant minority within the majority, it doesn't work. That's why we're locked up in Congress.
Okay. Do you think they could ever find common ground within the majority? If they had a bishop out there?
Well, I was urged to go to Congress at one point to run against against Tim Penny.
Yep.
And I went to Washington, took my wife down to Washington to interview people, and Bill Frenzel was a congressman down there. I met with him, and he said, Dave, I've been here 18 years, and I'm in the minority, and I haven't passed anything. You've been in Minnesota legislature, and it's run by the Democrats, and you're a Republican, and you've passed a whole bunch of good legislation for the whole state of Minnesota. Go back to Minnesota. Don't bother coming to Congress where you'll be in the minority. Keep doing what your job is. You know how to run for and pass laws from the minority.
Well, do you think that you should have taken that advice?
I tried to raise the money. I also went to a Republican National Committeeman and staff, and I said, if I run for Congress, will you help me? He said, yes, we'll give you $50,000 for your campaign after you already show in September that you're winning. But you'll have to raise $700,000 on your own. So I came home and I asked one of my friends who I'd worked with working for the county actually. I won't tell you his name, but he's well known and influential. And I said, I need to have somebody raise money for me to go to Congress. Will you do it? He said, no. I said, why? He says, because you want to run against Penny, and you're more liberal than Tim Penny.
There's another book here, I can tell. Oh, that's funny. All right. I'll let Washington worry about Washington, but...
Let's talk about this one.
Well, we will in a minute. We will in a minute. What is, of all the years you served in the legislature, what is your biggest accomplishment?
I think my biggest, I've got two accomplishments. One is the biggest, and one is the people that affects people the most, okay? The first one that was the biggest was really hard. Took me 5 years, and that was to pass the living will, to say that people could make out a living will while they're alive that would deal with what they want done if they become unable to make decisions for themselves at the end of their lives. If they get a terminal illness, and it really took me 5 years because I had a lot of opposition. You wouldn't think there'd be some.
That's what my first question was,
But,
what would be the opposition?
Well, the Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life thought that my bill was going in the direction of euthanasia, which they oppose. And, it was just hard for them to support it. And it was very hard. I actually had to get the help of a retired Senator, Joe O'Neill, who was representing the Catholic Health Associations. And I went to a dinner with him, and I said, Joe, I need your help. He said, we'll help you. I'll bring some people to your office and we'll see if we can help you build a living will. He did, and he recommended people that I should change my bill slightly, and I got votes from 2 Catholic members of the committee that I had to have, and I brought it out of committee 32 to 31 out of a big committee by 1 vote. And that's how I passed the living will with the aid of the Catholic Health Association. And the living will affects you. You can make out a living will now, and should, about what you want done or not done when you get an illness, a permanent illness where you can't decide anymore.
A lot of people have done that, as we have.
Yes, but one that people appreciate, to me, the most is the speed limit.
You appreciate it.
Well,
You knew those troopers as well as I did.
that's right. They were quite well acquainted with me. But I was driving on 52, and it's 55 miles an hour limit. And I said, this is crazy. This is a 4-lane highway, 55 miles an hour. So I put in the bill to raise the speed limit to 65, and I couldn't get it out of committee. I mean, every time I got a committee hearing, in would come the Department of Transportation folks and say, if you pass the Representative Bishop's bill, the federal government will come in and cut off our aid. The federal government insists that we have a 55-mile speed limit, and we'll cut it off if we don't. So I couldn't get the bill out of committee. It has to come from a committee to go to the floor and then get considered. One day there was a bill that came to the floor when I was on the floor, and here's a bill to finance roads. Well, that means my bill for speed limit is germane to a highway transit bill. So I got my amendment from my office and offered it. The legislators liked it, took it over to the Senate. They liked it, passed it from the Senate. And pretty soon I got a call from John Connor, the aide to the governor that I knew, and he said, Dave, Governor Carlson's going to veto your bill. I said, get me some time with the governor. He said, okay. He called me, said, you can come over and talk to the governor about a veto. I did, and the governor said the same thing. Dave, the highway patrol thinks that's raising the speed limit is going to be more accidents and deaths. He's going to veto your bill. I said, Governor, I brought my file along. I want to show you a couple things. The first thing I got from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is that the safest thing for driving is to drive with the speed of the prevailing traffic. Anything 15 miles an hour faster than prevailing is accident prone. Anything less than 15 miles an hour less is accident prone. Drive with the speed of traffic. If the traffic is if the speed limit's 55 and the traffic is going 60, drive 60. I said, the other thing, Governor, he said, yeah, maybe. But I said, the other thing, Governor, is I represented somebody when Highway 52 was a 2-lane road in Rochester. I had represented somebody that was going to lose some land. And I got the file when we're talking about speed limits. I went and got this piece out of the file. You see what it says? This is right from the file when we went from 52 2 lanes to 52 4-lane highway. You see what it says on there, Governor? Design speed 70 miles per hour. Highway 52 in the 1950s was designed for 70 miles an hour. I only want 65. Okay, Dave, he said, I'll sign it.
That's a story that they're glad to hear because everybody likes to drive that.
Well, it's the safe, the highway's safe at 65, and it's actually safe at 70.
We're going to bring Amy in here.
Oh.
Amy
I'm gonna
is
tell
another.
some stories
just
about
a
you.
minute, Amy is another legend of the legislature because the interest groups and the public are represented by lobbyists, and Amy is a lobbyist and one that can be really proud of her profession. I mean, it's no longer drinks and coffee and lunch and dinner. It's good ideas and standing behind your good ideas.
And
she,
persistence.
yes, well,
That was persistence.
I know, but that's good. But she wasn't obnoxious.
I hope not.
No?
No, that's right.
And Dave was always a champion for our community. He did big things, like he orchestrated the disposition of the state hospital, and of course, when that got sold to the federal government, all of the money by law went back to the state. But he worked it out so that in the bonding bill, money came for RCTC, well, for Winona State at RCTC, for our waste to energy facility, which is certainly still working.
He's a clever
I mean, he
gentleman.
had this all, he is the most clever negotiator we've ever had at the Capitol, and he worked for us. So he did big things like that. He also did little tiny things that were meaningful. One day he hauled me into Representative Munger's office, who was the head of the Environment Committee, and he said, I'm bringing this Democrat to come and talk to you, Willard. And it was, we needed to have an exemption from the law that says no government may sell the mineral rights underneath their buildings. And if we were going to sell the old courthouse to Mayo Clinic, they wanted the mineral rights, so they would have control of any kind of a subway system. He'd already done something like this when we sold the prison, because of course the prison wanted control of the mineral rights. They didn't want some criminal buying that and then being able to tunnel into the prison. So Willard Munger had to do that because mineral rights goes through the environment. And so he got Willard to accept that as part of a bill. And once the chairman does, it's, you know, it was a very important thing. We couldn't have sold our old courthouse without that. It seems small, but he did those kinds of things. Plus, he did things for us with dealing with sex offenders. We got all kinds of special grants, thanks to Dave. He helped us build the Juvenile Detention and Treatment Center. He got that into the bonding bill. He was an absolute champion for community corrections statewide. And in fact, until last year, his was the last time that we got money for community corrections. That was in 2001. It had been absolutely flat, if not descending. And that's what we do to keep people out of prisons. And of course now, Department of Corrections needs adding on to prisons, because for 10 years, without Dave in the legislature, nothing has been done for community corrections.
Yeah, but I believed in community corrections, and you
Yeah.
persuaded me that community corrections at the local level kept people out of prison
And they did.
by giving them education and training and giving them a job, helping them get jobs. Community corrections
It's really good.
kept people that had committed crimes from, and gave them the opportunity to change their lives and get back into citizens that were working. Community corrections was not valued by a lot of legislators, and they didn't understand how important it is.
We're going to
tell
be
you.
late.
I'll tell you one more
I
thing.
don't know if you're watching me, so, but we're already at the end of a half hour. I would like to ask what you think of the judge and his view of the Sex Offender Act now, but we haven't got time to talk about it. So, all right, Amy's book is one that the League of Women Voters has published about women in the 70s to 90s. But David's is newly published, and you can get it at Barnes & Noble.
Yes.
And where else, Amy? You know.
No, I think that's,
Barnes & Noble?
yeah.
Yes, that's the
Good.
place.
Yep, that's the
They
best.
feature it right next to the cash register.
And it is really must reading, not just for legislators, but for the people who really enjoy the process. And those who don't, they should know how hard it is, right?
That's it.
Oh, you're such a sweetie. Thank you. That's good.
Thank you.
Barnes and Noble, thank you both, Amy, and I didn't do you justice.
thank
but,
you.
David,
I
we
talked
didn't
too
do
long.
you.
Yeah.
No, we didn't do you justice either. 'Cause
He is a great mentor.
I think we have another half hour here on just current events. All right. Thank you, our viewers, for being with us this week. We'll be with you again next week, same time, same channel. In the meantime, have a very good week. Have a very good night.
Okay, and this
Okay,
is
now.